My name is Anja Overdiek. I'm a lecturer, a professor, cyber social design at Creating Null Team. That's the research center which is organizing this. And I'm the head of the lead of the economy track. What we talked this morning about was very much about sustainability transitions and how we can use technology and IoT for that, and how important it is to reframe also the very word of innovation. Among others, we got to the conclusion that we need a new way of collaborating, and not solutionism, but also the spaces to fail and to fail together and to learn from that. That we need other motivations and variables to measure innovation or success in organizations, and that we really need to learn as a kind of swarm from each other. And that also brought us to the conclusion that we really need to learn more from nature and how nature is solving problems. The good thing is that we invited Mari Genova for this afternoon for the workshop. I'm very happy to have her here. And Mari and I, our collaboration is also an example for, I think, a new way of working with students, because Mari used to be a student with us, with me. But we work together on projects, and Mari specialized herself also with her graduation in nature-inspired design. She is graduated as industrial design engineer from the Hague University of Applied Sciences, and worked there with Dr. Laura Stevens, who is a specialist in biomimicry. And Mari graduated on a project to help prevent ocean pollutions from face masks. The filtration mechanism of this product is of the manta ray that inspired her design for a sustainable filter with a high degree of filtration. So she also adapted this perspective to her own project, and ever since has become a specialist. So a warm welcome to you, Mari, and I will be your assistant today. Yeah. Take it from here.
Thank you. I'm Mari. I am currently working as a junior researcher for the Center of Expertise Mission Zero. And on the other side, I'm also a product developer at a company called Bolster, or Kinetic Balance, and we're designing products for people that are seated and need assistance. And my role there is to help them design more sustainably and be more conscious of their design. And I came here today to talk about biomimicry, which is my passion ever since I discovered it 2 years ago. Oops, sorry. And why biomimicry? Biomimicry is 3.8 years of research and design. Imagine everything that we're trying to solve has already been done in a more conscious, more sustainable and more genius way. Biomimicry boosts our creativity and allows us to create a responsible innovation, but it also inspires us and helps us to reconnect with nature, go back to nature, observe nature, because this is also the essence of biomimicry. And before I dive deep into what is biomimicry, I would like to tell you what is not, because it usually gets confused for other specialties. So we have biomorphism, which is only about emulating looks, which is nice and it is inspiring, but it is not done in a way to inspire functional solutions. So if you want to design a packaging, you can look at the honeycomb, but if you're not thinking how it's going to be transported, how it's you're going to reduce the space needed, how you're going to collect the packaging, then it's just simply emulating looks, and you're not looking into nature to create sustainable solutions. If you're looking, then there is the other specialty, bioutilization, which is about looking and taking something from nature and integrating it into your design. And a great example for this is Blue Box, which is located in Blue City. They're using seaweed to design sustainable panels. Amazing work. You should check them out. Really inspiring. But they're not doing biomimicry. And this is also totally okay. But just wanted to distinguish the other fields from biomimicry. Biomimicry is about emulating form, processes, and systems to provide functional solutions. And those three ways of doing biomimicry progress accordingly. The hardest way to do biomimicry or to mimic nature is on a system level. Oh, I forgot to switch through my slides. Now, I would like to introduce you to biomimicry and what is nature-inspired design. First, biomimicry follows three core principles, and one of the most important one, I believe, is the ethos. So how we stay conscious to our innovation, how do we make our innovation sustainable, how do we stay conscious and true to nature. Then it's about reconnecting, because you cannot practice biomimicry if you don't go outside and you don't observe nature, how a flower blooms. You cannot understand biomimicry if you're not outside, outdoors. Unfortunately, we couldn't do this today, but I highly advise you to try it. Just sit in a park and observe nature. You would see amazing things. And the third one, emulate, which is the essence. You take the genius of nature and integrate it into your solutions. And along the way, you will be guided by the life's principles, which are in 6 groups. And within those 6 groups, you have 3 to 4 life principles. And those life principles you would find in nature organisms. So the more you integrate in your solutions, the more sustainable your solutions will be. The more conscious and true to nature you stay. You can use them during the biomimicry thinking framework. And you can do that at the very beginning of the phase or at the very end of the phase. So here you can choose life principles that would guide you along the way, whether you design forms, processes, or systems, or at the end of your design phase, where you use them to measure and improve your design. And usually, biomimicry follows this framework, but it could be done in 2 ways. You can start by discovering natural models in the surrounding environment. If you go to the park and you observe the birds, you can find something amazing there, and you can start thinking, oh, how can I integrate this into a local problem? Because you have to stay locally attuned and responsive. And you can also do it in a second way. You can start by defining a challenge for yourself, or start looking at the challenge, and then move on to choosing of functions, because as I mentioned earlier, it's always important to come up with a functional solution, not simply emulate the forms of nature. Then you start by integrating principles, discover natural models, abstracting the biological mechanism or the biological strategy, bio-brainstorming, or how we all know it, brainstorming. Then you emulate the design principle, and you finish with measuring your design through life principles and thinking of ways maybe how you can improve it to become more sustainable. And let's say that a multidisciplinary team is looking for a solution to regulate a temperature in a building. So what they would do, they will first define the function. Then they would start by either diving deeper into research articles or doing research as we all know it, or better way, they can invite the biologist to their table and help, so that the biologist could help them find the perfect organism for their solution. And in this case, the biological specialist came up with the cactus, and the cactus strategy is to use its form to create shadow in one side of its body. So only 30% of the cactus body would stay facing the sun and on a direct heat light, and the rest of the body would stay in the shadow. And this is not only important to regulate the temperature, but also it allows the cactus radial ribs to be cooled on this side, and thus a cooler air ventilates through them. In addition to its form, it regulates the temperature through those cooler air. And then you would have the mechanism in a short summary. You would take the summary along with you along the way, and then for the next step, when you have the short summary, you would, let's say, you would scratch all the biological words, so you can actually integrate this into your solution. And how you're going to do this? When you scratch all the biological words, you would come with an abstracted design principle. So in this case, for the cactus that we're trying to find a way for a building to regulate its temperature, you would have an abstracted design principle. Alternating rib structure create ventilation channels via convectional currents to provide shade for temperature regulation. And I guess, oh my God, what she's talking about. This is so hard. I can only imagine. The first time I heard a lecture about biomimicry, I was so confused. But with practice, it only gets easier and easier. So that's why, for the second part of this workshop, I would invite you to practice and get excited about biomimicry, because just a lecture would not help you see the potential of this field. So I will go back to the presentation. So after you have your abstracted design principle, which is based on your mechanism, after studying the organism, you would draw a very technical diagram. So this diagram would guide you along the way when you start the bio-brainstorming or the brainstorming, which is the next phase. And all this sounds amazing, but I would love to give you real examples of how biomimicry was successfully implemented, because it's really hard to study the biological mechanism and directly find a way to integrate it. It takes hard work, but some of the great examples are the Eastgate Center in Zimbabwe. It's a building that self-regulates its temperature, and it does it by taking inspiration by the termite mounds that here look super solid, but in fact they're hollow inside. So all of this are tunnels that the ants built, the termites built. So then through conventional currents, they could regulate the temperature inside. And why they do this? Because underneath there is fungi, and they have to regulate the temperature inside. And another great example is the Shinkansen bullet train that I believe, all have heard about it. And the engineer of the bullet train was actually a bird watcher. How cool, right? He could have never solved the problem of the bullet train going into a tunnel, creating an air pressure, and every time that it exits the tunnel, it creates a boom sound. Imagine living next to a tunnel like this. You would not want to do this. Neither be an animal in this area. So he looked at the kingfisher. How beautiful, right? He looked at the kingfisher, but more specifically, he looked at its beak. How the kingfisher dives into the water without creating any splash. He got inspired by this amazing bird and created a more energy efficient and a faster train. For the purpose of this workshop, I would not go in depth with all the examples, but we have the UV reflecting glass, which is friendly for birds, and prevent them from flying into windows. We have a lot of lotus flower paint inspired by the lotus flower, which is water and dirt repellent. We have the wind turbines inspired by the humpback whale, and especially on the bumps here. And whoops, wrong button. And then here are how they were successfully integrated into nature. This is the lotus flower because the paint is based on taking inspiration from the lotus flower leaf microscopic structure that allows the water droplets to flow over, not spill over. And as I said, I can talk a lot about biomimicry, but in order to really help you understand biomimicry, because I do believe that if I tell you, you may forget. If I show you, you might remember. But if I help you to join me today and get inspired together, you definitely understand, or hopefully you would understand, depends on how it goes. But for today, I have created 4 challenges. We're going to do the biomimicry thinking framework starting from the challenge. We'll look at 2 big or larger groups, smart communities and smart retail, and we'll do it by applying the biomimicry thinking framework. The first challenge is how can we learn from nature to create a shared resource network within a sustainable community, and how can we learn from nature to leverage recycling processes within the retail sector, how can we learn from nature to connect members across organization, and to improve the communication flow. And those challenges are on a system level, so it is really hard to do biomimicry on a system level. But I would advise you to do it metaphorically and try to find solutions in nature to solve those challenges. And for the rest of the workshop, we're going to do the design sprint, and it's going to take up to 1 hour. And I would guide you through every step along the way. But for now, we would like to invite you to take a 5-minute break before we dive deep into that. Yeah?
Maybe as your assistant, after all these details you gave us,
yeah,
allow me to grab some questions.
Of course.
I can only imagine that people have some questions for you before we go into practice. Who has a question for Marie?
So you worked with Laura.
Yes.
I met her a couple of years ago. I'm very impressed with what she's doing. So I'm curious, what was the most important thing you learned in working with her?
She got me infected with her biomimicry virus in a way 2 years ago, and she learned me to stay conscious, because you can do biomimicry and take advantage of nature. And if you do this, then you're not really practicing this amazing framework. You're just taking the functional side of the biological organism and you're applying it to your solution, but you're not staying true to nature. And this sometimes might be a problem that people come across, because it's really hard to do biomimicry. But she inspired me and always taught me that in order to truly practice the biomimicry thinking framework, you should stay true to nature.
Yeah.
I have a question. Does biomimicry also pertain to behavior of animals?
Yeah. If you look at the system level, which is the hardest way to mimic nature, we will talk about behavior.
Because we had some blue jays in the garden, and their behavior was like inspiring.
Yeah, if you look at the...
we had a broom out there. At some moment, there was no broom left, but they used it all for nest building.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
Another question? Shall we try it like that?
Maybe I can try it like mine. You showed us some examples of physical projects, like buildings and product design things. Did you experiment with this framework
Personally, I have not, but if you look at the mycelium and how it connects how it connects trees and plants and bushes through their roots underground, you can get great inspiration from it. So personally, I have not, but there's ways to do this.
So, if there's no other question at this moment, I have one question, because I'm not a trained biomimicry designer. And what I understood is, so with any problem we want to find an innovative perspective for, we can define the function, what we need, then find an organism in nature which helps us with that, and emulate that.
Yes.
That's right?
That's right.
Okay, then
And maybe I should
understood the basics, I think.
And just to add one thing, you will be guided by the life principles along the way.
Okay.
And my English is not very good. How do you know what you're looking for? Because there are millions of animals. So how do you know which one you would like to mimic?
You would do this by first defining the context, and then you would define the function. So there are practical tools to do this, and they're all available at the Biomimicry 3.0 website. You can download them. Some of them are free for use, others are not. And I have a link at the end of the presentation. But when you define the function through the biomimicry taxonomy, so this is a big list with different functions, you you either use this function to go at asknature.org, which is a website where you type in the function and different organisms that perform this function come to you, and then you can start diving deeper into the research, looking for other organisms, but your function will be guidance along the way.
Is there a possibility to mix those kind of animals so you have different kind of birds, and maybe the best points of every bird you can combine them to have I don't know.
That is the essence. Yes, yes. If you can do this, usually more experienced biomimics does this because it's really hard. But if you can just do this, then my advice is, yeah, of course.
I have a small question. Being a designer, sometimes what's the mindset that you need to let go of to do this really well?
That's a interesting question. You should forget everything that you've learned in industrial design or any type of other design. So this is the mindset that you need to let go of. Yes, start clean.
So that's a good exercise for this 5 minutes break we have now. What I also see that Marie will prepare us with overviews of biomimicry taxonomy. We will have a lot of information to help us with the challenge. And maybe we take now 5 minutes to forget everything we know to start this challenge. So tell you we restart at 2:20. So I think we can restart. It's always tricky if you give a break so that you have everybody back in the room. Marie, take us away. I think you have a concise planning here.
Yes. So for the second part of the workshop, we're going to engage with those challenges. And because I don't want to restrict you, but either inspire you, so I would like to ask who would like to work on the first challenge, which is how can we learn from nature to create a resource shared resource network with sustainable communities? Okay. Then we can form one group over here. Please join one of the tables. Or maybe even two, I would say. I don't know. Yeah, okay, just let's do one. And then who would like to work on the second challenge? Okay, I would invite you to form a group around another table. And what about the third challenge? Okay, how can we learn from nature to connect members across organizations to improve the communication flow? Okay, and then form. Maybe then you can do like the three of you can do one group here. Maybe I don't even need.
The third challenge.
Yeah, okay. Then we have the fourth group here. So I would like to invite you to start with, here is the plan for today. So you start with scoping the challenge, but as we're doing a design sprint, we're going to do this by writing down your challenge, either at the top of the flip over or here. And then once you have written down your challenge, you would highlight or underline the important words that you find important. And when you've done this, I would like to invite you to think of systems. So how your challenge is related to the larger system, either smart communities or smart retail. And those supporting materials, which is the Biomimicry Taxonomy, and on the back you find the life principles, I would advise you to leave them for later. They would come handy during defining the function and defining life principles that would guide you along the way. So, let's do the hands-on work, yeah? Yes, of course. Or take picture of the challenge. I think that would be easier. I would advise you to write down the challenge, and then you can underline the important words. Shared resource network, for example. So then they would guide you along the way where you're choosing the function or the life principles.
But it's on an abstract level. We don't need a concrete example.
No.
Okay. Yeah, that's
Yes.
Daniel, ik ben docent Trade Marketing en Sales, commerciële
Can I help?
dat zijn matching en ethiek. Waar is de ethiek en marketing? Waarom altijd meer? Waarom altijd sneller? Voor wie dan? Dus ik leer studenten formules hoe ze meer moeten vergaren niet, maar ik probeer ook vragen te stellen, maar wat doe je hier? Het systeem erachter. Daarom vind ik dit super interessant. Ja, we kunnen wel van natuur leren, omdat ja, zodoende ga je bewustzijn creëren. Wat zij net zei, denk ik, dat support ik helemaal. Bewustzijn is de start. Dus Dat vind ik een leuk initiatief ook, zeg maar, van met nu voor deze tijd ook in natuurlijke processen, bamboe bijvoorbeeld, vind ik een interessant voorbeeld. Bamboe groeit gigantisch snel. Ook in Nederland kan bamboe groeien.
But also the supply chain.
However, onze lunchpakketjes mee in bananenbladeren. Hoe noemen we dat hier? Ja, verhoudens bij. Het groeit supersnel. Als groeit.
It's really
Als dat bananenblad helpt niet. Ja, nee.
which I changed by mistake. Writing down the challenge, and once you've written down the challenge, you will then identify important words or guiding words. So leverage second processes, and you would know later on to
Materiaal is vaak waar we het niet meer zien.
when customizing don't be scared. Don't be scared. It is scary, but yeah, exactly. The first time I did it, I didn't understand a thing. So we all have the same experience.
Start somewhere and then
Yes, exactly.
experience.
Maar het is ook aan het creëren van het netwerk. Hoe je het creëert.
And my advice is now that you have you know the largest system, which is smart communities, try to look at what are the factors within this large system and how your challenge finds itself in this larger system.
But we don't need this.
No, this is later. Yeah.
So then please once again.
Here you would write the larger community, the larger system, which is in your case smart communities. Then try to identify what are the factors or stakeholders, what is happening in this larger community, and how is your challenge related to it.
Community of a network.
Smart communities. Maybe you can look at the stakeholders within this smart community.
I thought about social
Oh, you're doing a fine job here.
Yeah, we just came to the conclusion that animals don't deplete their resources, but humans do.
That is a very important conclusion, especially for biomimicry, I would say.
But we still don't know what we're
How
designing.
can we learn from them to do this in a more sustainable way? Or not to do this, actually.
Gisteren is er in Rotterdam in Pertain en Albert Heijn juist zonder. Ja, die zijn dus gisteren
Er zijn inderdaad wel gedeelde waarden, dus qua shared resources, shared values, zou je kunnen zeggen, maar ook als resources weer van value.
Kortom, wat de merkbeleving
Onderzocht is dat ze veel wortels. Ja, allerlei informatie.
Ik denk ook hier.
Champignons. Ja, ik denk ook deze voeding die veel meer onder de grond. Alles die bomen liggen, als de ene boom dreigt uit te vallen, dan wordt die door de andere boom.
Oké. Maar hebben we zo'n groep? Oh. I wish it wasn't a sprint, but unfortunately, we don't have the time.
I was about to say it's not a sprint but a marathon.
So how much more time do we have?
Preservation.
Animals preserved, we don't. Not naturally, in a way. At least,
I will rephrase it we take more than my to give a very it's quite stupid example maybe, but you know one of the problems for biodiversity in cities is the way that we feed dogs. Because dogs need to go to bed. Feed them, they need to take the nutrition from outside of the city into the city, but they defecate in the city. So it means that you get overabundance of roles and responsibilities. They can only be done by so then you don't have any flowers, but you get a lot of nettles because we have a lot of dogs in cities. It reduces the biodiversity, whereas in nature doesn't get tremendous amounts over tremendous distances to actually feed themselves.
ja, of can I help? But if you join that,
Maar ik vond deze ook wel. Want uiteindelijk gaan we ook over die communication flow.
Can I help?
Always. How far are you? Because I hear that you're talking about something, but I don't hear that it's yes.
Zien dat ze het uit laten vloeien op plekken waar het ook
Sustainable. Sustainable.
maar is dat
Or is it about how you don't take them? What are you, because I think this is quite interesting.
Allemaal staat
How you process information. And then here you can find, or just this is the, no. But I like that for last to always give them asking you whether or not make dedicated organism that you chose.
for the function, this would help you for the function, let's say, process. How process information, you would write process information. And you already have your system map, and then here you have your function that will guide you along the way. And then when you have your function, you look at the life principles, which life principles could help you to design and to think of sustainable solutions, conducted to life. I think that, yeah, so here's one. So my advice is write function. As you want to improve the communication, so write function, process information here, and then move on to the next step. Maybe I should. Okay, may I have your attention? Sorry, may I have your attention? I think it's good for me to step in now so I can bring some clarity. From what I'm seeing, you have already made your system mapping, and you're currently either working on defining the function, or you have already defined your function, depend on how far you're with the process. If you haven't defined the function, please do so. And if you have defined the function, you can move to the next step, integrating life's principles. You can choose life's principles from the... Thank you. It's not working in my favor. You can choose life's principles from this sheet. And you can choose the ones that work the best for your challenge. And just to choose two. They would guide you along the way, and it doesn't have to be too many, because we also don't have enough time for this. But if you're looking at, let's say, how to recycle, look at how you can self-organize to do this better. Depending on your challenge, try to find one or two that fits your solution. And then we're going to, that match your solution, challenge, sorry. And then we're going to move to the next steps. So please define the function and think of two life principles to integrate.
Not yet, we still need to.
I think Pertain is still on. Okay, I think this is already far enough for the time that we have. And then you can choose a function. So from here, I would advise you to look at how to maintain a community, and then you use, when you define, you can either maintain community. Yes, exactly. And you can incorporate activities, or you can activities, systems, groups, or self-organize, depends on where you want to be. And then you can use the function when you look for something.
Disturbances. Yeah.
So what we're figuring out, we made some associations of what came to our mind when we talked about smart community. Some of those are directed to resources, and some of them
We've been looking at different species. I think within an ecosystem.
Sharing resources, and then think of organisms that share resources. We're going to do this support me, so we cannot dive deep into it and really do a research. But you can, if you cannot think of organisms, you can also look at online asknature.org and then type in shared resources and then organisms would come to you.
Take a sheep, for instance. So we can use the wool. Yeah, exactly.
Of it. And this you can so when a seashell is washed on the beach, smaller or larger hermit crabs start to circle around it. And if the shell is too big, they wait for the biggest hermit crab that would fit into the shell to join the circling group. And once it's joined, they line up as piggybacks in the back of each other. And the moment he steps out of its seashell and goes into the big seashell that it's washed away, a whole chain reaction happens. So every hermit crab goes in the shell of the other. So they recycle all of their shells through communication. So you have recycling through communication. It's just amazing. You can also look at it in detail at asknature.org. You can either you can just put hermit crab and it would give you the full information. But this is also enough. And my advice is to look at the life principles as well. Don't forget that. This helps you to do your solution in a sustainable way. So in yourself, how can you self-organize so you can, for example, I'm just saying, how can you self-organize within a larger system to allow such chain reaction to happen?
Basically, to create communities wearing the same clothing, having the same interest within a kind of branch or like fashion.
And how you do this? How you allow them to wear the same clothes? You need to self-organize them in a way. How you do this, and then you can use the life principles as a guidance along the way. Hello, how is it going? You can think about organisms in a metaphorical way, so you can imagine what they do, because right now we don't have the time to really dive deep into the research. Or you can, if you would like to, you can type in your function in asknature.org. Organisms would pop up, but what was the challenge? Sorry? I can also help.
Smart retail. Recycling in smart retail.
I was just telling to them the story of the hermit crab. The hermit crab. It's the hermit crab recycles the shells that it has on top, and how it does it. Every time a seashell is washed on the shore, hermit crabs start circling around it. And when they circle, if it's a big shell, they wait for a big hermit crab to come along. And when the big hermit crab comes along, you see all other crabs lining on the back, and they create a line of hermit crabs on the back and like piggybacks. And once the big hermit crab goes into the first big shell that it's empty, a chain reaction happens, and every hermit crab follows. So they recycle their shells through communication, and nothing is waste.
Okay.
So I think this is also interesting. But you can also type your challenge in asknature.org and find other organisms, or imagine how other organisms do this. Because in nature, nothing is waste. So every organism does this. And I think this one is really relevant. Yeah, it's interesting.
How do you do it? So it seems like people can bring their leftover cooked food instead of getting kant-en-klaar maaltijd.
Exactly.
In a community home, you can offer cooked food to each other. Maybe.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah, and create a community and share the resources, who needs it the most, how to do it efficiently, so ones don't get too much and others get too little, do it according to the people that are involved in the system in such a way.
Ask nature.
En dan moeten we naar die life cycle. Dan moeten we naar die life principle.
Still a big problems defining our function.
Okay, so connect members across organizations. I would say maintain community.
Yes, but we have written down this function because the function is this one. Or do you want this one as well?
I would say you can think of whether you want a corporative to do it in a corporative way, provide ecosystem services, or cooperate and compete.
Yes, but is this the function or is this the function?
This is the function, but because
so this one has. We wrote down this one.
My advice would be to use a group and self-organize. Because I think it's really relevant for you. To connect members across organization, you have to group them, and then they would have to organize in an intuitive way. And you can look at the ants; they're so smart how they do this. And you can look at the red ants.
Yeah, but the ants are one hive, and ants don't work with other hives. And our objective is to communicate between organizations, so between different hives.
But ants, they are smart. They might be one hive, but within the colony, you have different types of organizations. Let's call it organizations.
Same as bees, workers and.
Yes. And how they do this, it's so amazing in my opinion. So you have early in the morning, they send soldiers to look for food, and depending on how fast the soldiers come back, they and when they touch their antennas, the other one knows, okay, the ant is back, and depending on how fast the ant came back, they would think, oh, should we send more ants to look for food, or we're going to use our resources that are already available. And depending on how fast the other ants come, that the next wave of ants going to look for food, they notified through the ants, okay, should we send even more ants to go there? So they do it in a very sustainable way. They don't waste energy. They don't waste resources. If we don't have to go, we won't go. If we cannot get to the food, we won't do this. We will wait for a better opportunity. And they do this without having one ant that is navigating them. So they do it through feedback loops, which is something you can look at the life principles. They do it through feedback loops, constant interaction and communication.
There was an ant in my toilet yesterday, and I thought, what are you doing here?
So amazing, right?
So the ants as a collective.
Yeah. Yes. And depending on how close you're to the entrance of the anthill, the more communication goes through you, so you become a hub.
But how is that decision being made?
Sorry?
How is a decision being made to send more ants?
Touching the antennas.
Yeah, but at the end, you also said that they also have to go back from their resources. So they have to make a choice. Do we do the resources or send more ants?
That depends on how fast the ant comes back. So they know when the ant goes on its
So
journey.
that means that every decision is based on rules.
Yes. So we always need rules, unfortunately.
I know.
But there is no ant that gives charge to the others. They do it only through communication.
Okay.
Which I think is interesting. How they manage to use feedback loops from the life's principles to manage their communication and to manage food searching.
It also means that the function an ant has in the hive can change.
No.
If you say you have soldiers, at one point they run out of soldiers. Who are they going to send them?
So they won't distribute. They wouldn't. So you have different communities. So you have soldiers, but you won't distribute all your soldiers.
No, say at one point you run out of soldiers.
But they would come back. You know?
Maybe they don't come back. It's nature.
That's also yeah. Okay, that's also true. But then there are the natural processes of getting more ants, I guess.
Okay. There.
So, how is it going?
Well, we're trying to do the method. That's what we're doing. We thought of the shared resource as I thought of the pond where the animals drink, so you could dig a hole and accumulate water. So the principles, this one is use the dynamic process, and two is fit form to function. That's
Okay.
But now, is it good to have two principles from the same, or we can choose any two?
You can have principles from the same category, or you can choose different principles. Usually.
So we have both for the the examples that we each
Do we have a kind of syllabus for the reading? What do we take out? Gifts or do a handout or something?
I had the two handouts, but we run out of handout.
Okay.
But at the end of the presentation, I have also put my email. So if you have any further questions or you want me to share some information, I would love to.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
And
so
then
now we're going to proceed to step 4.
Step 3, I think.
You've already done You've already done step 3?
Integrate.
Toch? Ja, geen
So we've chosen
Ja, dat is wel.
For example, if you use them, you know, not sprint, but a real process, you can use the life principles to guide you along the way that you don't take advantage of. Because you can mimic a system or a function, but then you use plastic, let's say it's food. You take advantage of the energy supply system as a system. You're not locally in tune and responsive to the others around you and to the community. So this is your insurance that you perceive as sustainable.
So it's apply this as a guiding principle.
So we can choose a number of those examples indeed, and let's say we believe that these are right examples for what we have defined as the principles.
Allows allows the trees underneath to connect. And how it does that? It goes around the roots of the trees or the bushes and also inside and creates a network under the ground that allows organisms to share resources. For example, if the old trees that through photosynthesis generate sugar distribute through the mycelium, distribute to smaller bushes or plants that are dying, distribute the sugar so that they can thrive. And also the mycelium provides nutrition and chemicals to all the organisms within the system. But something I find very cool about the mycelium, it allows the trees to communicate as in a smart community. So you would, the old trees...
Trees are communicating.
Yes, actually, through the mycelium. The big trees become hubs because most connections go through them.
Yeah.
And in this way, if a certain animal is attacked, then they would, certain tree is attacked, they would send and they would send a signal and the rest of the system would know.
And they start to produce, let's say, poison. An animal that would attack the next plant and die.
And then also through the signals, it allows the network to know which organisms are dying so that they could distribute more sugar from the old trees to survive. How smart, right?
It's very impressive.
Oh yeah. Which offers them protection. Oh yeah. And they in turn.
Also, one tip, because this was one example of organism that does this, you can put your function in asknature.org and look for other organisms that might inspire you.
Okay, I have asked names, but I tried, of course, and didn't know how to do it. So where do I make a mistake? I can ask nature.org. So far, so good. And then I did see search, so I thought that's the place to go.
Yeah.
But then I got lost.
Here.
So I tried.
And then you put shared resources.
So now it says there's 8 biological strategies and 2 innovations.
Yes, so you would look at the biological strategies because the innovations are already ideas on how to implement that.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Welcome.
What is an absorptive chamber? I want to know what that is. We found a mangrove that came out of our property. And then we found we had these ideas that we wanted to have organic growth and treat the nutrition. And then it turns out the mangrove had where things like ants live. And they have there's a certain tree. That's an example they give us a tree, the mangrove, in the mangrove. And they have a structure, like a tree has a structure. Ants live inside the structure, along with butterfly larvae. Think about it, it's really hard to do this. I'm not a biologist. Alright, but that's what I'm saying right now. There's a problem, and that's an objective problem.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
bye-bye.
Can we an absorptive column where the larva of the butterfly
You can also go down.
Ja, dat is ook heel wichtig. Kijken wat jij hebt iets gezocht, hè? Hoe heb je dat Ja, weet ik niet.
organism that lives inside, I believe.
Er moet iets waarschijnlijk wel op de dingen te maken.
Nee, want het is
Ik zie het begrijp je wel dat je dus
Ja, dat is een beetje.
Waar zit het? Neem maar willekeurig eentje uit.
And you have the ants. And they excrete stuff, I think that was said, so they feed stuff into the absorbent cells of the bulbous thing. And the bulbous tree bed protects the
Zeg maar ook in duikles mee.
That is really nice. Because now, pandemic, I would say, right now, if you imagine this, started thinking about how nature could do this. This is already enough. You don't really have to understand it now because it's impossible.
What we like? Sorry.
Yeah, I understand. Just as an advice. Or maybe you can take this further.
Can you picture a hotel made out of sponges?
Well, I've built an insect hotel.
Made out of
And
sponges.
they have all these different kinds of like tubes, and they put all kinds of different plants, like so that they can not all be like the same. And try to think about it metaphorically because of time. And then maybe later on, after the workshop, you can really dive into this and how it does it. But as you were saying, how it creates the web, what it does. Try to think about it. Maybe even imagine it.
So it's more like that we just pinpoint it to do a rapid cycle of the whole process, and then we have time afterwards to dive deeper.
Yeah.
That's how to choose intuitive. Ah, okay. So we take one by intuition. So you said
Yes.
In 3 minuten. En dan 2 dingen pakken. En dan moesten ze inklokken, uitklokken met hun telefoon. Dat werd natuurlijk wel heel makkelijk gemaakt. Hè. Dus dat vonden studenten dan wel weer op vreemd. Maar gewoon even zo met telefoon en weg gaan weer. Maar ja, vroeger was het natuurlijk ja, wat het werkt heeft. Lekker geslapen. Nou, deze social behavior. Oh, ja, ik wil ook wel even koffie.
In mainstream teaching, the ones who having personal identity, posing, and then with the idea that we had.
Want je moet zoveel soms.
Is er eentje dan die iemand... Ja, die een beetje naartoe kan praten.
Ja. Wat jij als zorgprofessional
also biomimicry is about drawing it. You can really understand it once you draw the organism or the idea. So you would have it in front of you, and then ideas would start to pop up because you would look at the organism, and then you would look at the idea, and then you would move around them simultaneously. How can I help?
They are very far already. Look at you can help them.
So how far are you?
No, we use two principles that we go for multifunctional design, where we want to go to a situation where packaging is not specific but more generic, and therefore we want to reuse it. It's not complicated to get back to the producer. So there's no complicated logistics necessary to close the loop. And the other principle is to go with the flow of all the systems. So the flow is on, movement going on. Stuff to consumers. They're already moving about. How can we use that to help with the transportation problem? So we want those vans to not only deliver products with packaging, but also take back the used packaging. Use that to
make them possible in order for organisms to communicate. So if you want to go further with this, you can go to organisms that use feedback loops to communicate, and how they do this. Or if you, this is a possibility because I got a question during the presentation, can we integrate multiple organisms to solve a solution? That's always possible. And you can also use the life principles to make this idea more sustainable. You can go through the life principles and think, how can I make it, let's say, adapt to changing conditions. So what if the system, you don't have the person that would collect their waste, or because you don't want to have this, but how can you make it adapt to when something in the system changes? Because in a complex system you have different factors. How can you make it adapted to certain conditions?
Sure, follow.
Dan zou je gewoon hele universele huizen moeten hebben. Zoals een beetje...
Functioneel, ja. Dat hebben we al, rijtjeshuizen zijn al heel universeel.
Ja, maar zijn er heel divergent?
Ja.
En als je weet ik veel dat volk, zeg maar, dat eigenlijk heel nobel is en in hetzelfde huis wonen, alleen maar in dezelfde huis. Net hetzelfde.
Als we naar kleding kijken. Veel litter op dat.
Wat is jouw box nou?
Add-on verzinnen.
Hebben jullie al een idee?
Als wij een idee hebben. Ik heb zo gaan met je vanaf de tak. We hadden het hier ineens over dat de Hermit Crabs dus hun huisje afstaan op het moment dat ze uit hun huisje groeien. Dus ze beschikbaar stellen voor de andere Hermit Crabs. Toen kwam ik ineens op het idee van, joh, maar waarom doen dat de mensen niet? Ik bedoel, ik had het over mijn ouders.
Letterlijk over huisnet.
Ik had het over mijn ouders die dus beide in een gezinswoning zitten terwijl ze alleen zijn. Terwijl ik met mijn vriendin een huis zoek, maar dat niet kan betalen. Dat we hier zien, je denkt dus niet in kapitaal, maar je denkt dus in het ten gunste komen van de groep. Zodat we met z'n allen kunnen thrive, kunnen floreren. Zo, eigenlijk houden we dat vanuit kapitaal niet tegen.
Yeah, but I would have to announce that we will move on to the last step. So I will leave you to it.
En dan zeggen we, oké, dan zien we die schulden.
Excuse me? Sorry, may I have your attention? Maybe a little bit. May I have your attention, please? As we now have approaching to the last part of the workshop today, which I hope you did enjoy so far. I would like to invite you to, now that you have generated your ideas, to prepare, either finish them or prepare a small pitch within those 10 minutes that we have for that, and then present 2 minutes per team your idea and how it is related to the larger system that you first identified during the first step of this workshop. And my advice is, because I didn't start with the group name purposefully, I would like to invite you to put as your group name the organism that you took inspiration from. Because when you're doing biomimicry, it's always important to acknowledge the organism that you took inspiration and give the credit to nature.
I think you need a quarter of an hour
To go through all of them, because I was thinking 10. I was planning on 10 minutes, but maybe because it always goes a little bit. I would just.
Sorry? I don't think it's me. Very inspiring.
I'm happy.
Nou, ons oorspronkelijke probleem was natuurlijk hoe kunnen we daarvan leren? Dus dan zouden we eigenlijk een soort platform moeten inrichten, waarbij iedereen van alles kan zien wat relevant is. But it's the same idea. That doesn't change the idea of someone said one of my
So, I would like to invite the first group that would volunteer. Sorry? Yeah. Okay, okay.
2 more minutes. 2 more minutes.
2 more minutes?
Yeah, 2 more minutes.
Okay,
Everybody is ready. Toegang, dat is bereikbaarheid, ontmoeten elkaar kennen, gelijkwaardig hebben we en niet meer doen dan nodig is en waarbij zichtbaar is, inzicht. Ja. Inspannen of alles wat al gedaan is. Maar dat kunnen we wel toelichten, toch? Ja. Who wants to do first? Who wants to go first? You are the pitcher, so maybe you want to go first? Nee. Nou, jullie kunnen ook in het Nederlands. Nee, maar zij gaan pitchen. Oké, dus helemaal
Who would like to volunteer? Okay.
We gaan hier beginnen nu. What is your group's name? The Happy Ants. Let's listen to the Happy Ants.
Ja, nou, het probleem was to connect members across organizations to improve communication flow. En dus dat hebben wij uitgesplitst naar die members to connect and improve communication flow. Wij kwamen dan uit bij de mieren. En de Happy Ants was omdat ze toch een soort geromantiseerd beeld hier schepten van mieren. We hadden, we zaten eigenlijk het verbeteren van die communicatie. Dus wij dachten van, eigenlijk moet iedereen een soort gelijkwaardig zijn. Dat zijn mieren ook. Mieren hebben allemaal een andere functie. Dus dat zijn dan die members across organizations. Dus zo hebben wij eigenlijk de mieren vertaald. En de oplossing, hoe wij dat wilden aanpakken, is eigenlijk dat we een soort platform moeten inrichten waarbij iedereen toegang heeft. Op gelijkwaardig niveau. Of je nou sociaal hulpverlener bent of psychiater, als je het terugkoppelt naar de jeugdzorg. En tevens inzicht heeft in ieders inspanningen. Want als iemand natuurlijk weet dat, zeker in de jeugdzorg, als een kind psychische problemen heeft, maar dat wordt gevoed door financiële problemen thuis of geweld wat er thuis wordt gebruikt, dan hadden we bedacht, dan moet je dat natuurlijk ook inzichtelijk maken, dat er meer dingen spelen dan alleen de gemoedstoestand van het kind. Dus dat was onze by nature inspired mierending. Dingen durven delen. Ja. Ook al weet je niet, toch gaan. Beginnen en delen. Niet wachten tot je het allemaal weet, of zeker weet. Maar die mieren ook niet, die gaan er gewoon af.
Let's give them a round of applause.
Next group, we go by the clock now. Yeah.
Dat zijn 10 walrus.
I'd like to take picture of the papers. Of the papers, yeah.
Walrus heeft slagtanden die
Ja.
functioneel zijn. Hij eet ermee, hij vecht ermee, hij slaapt, hij graaft
Okay, that you can make picture.
Thank you.
En dit multifunctionele hebben we toegepast op ons probleem. En dat was recyclingprocessen in de retail. Dan gaat het erom dat er heel veel bijvoorbeeld verpakkingsmateriaal of andere materialen in richting uitgaan, maar die moet ook weer terug om de recyclingloop te sluiten. Daar hebben we ook een ander principe bij meegenomen, bijvoorbeeld van kleine organismen die met zich mee laten drijven met oceaanstromen boven de flow, om tot het idee te komen waarbij we dus dat multifunctionele pakken en multifunctionele verpakkingen maken die generiek zijn, slechts enkele soorten. We hebben hier bijvoorbeeld een standaard doos en een standaard pot. En alle vloeistoffen, of het nou voedingsstoffen zijn of wasmiddel of noem maar op, dat kan allemaal in één standaard pot. En alle andere producten kunnen gewoon in één standaard doos. En daarmee hebben we dus een multifunctionele verpakking die makkelijk hergebruikt kan worden en waarmee de logistiek ook heel veel simpeler wordt. Want je hoeft niet meer precies die verpakking op dat materiaal naar die verwerkingsfabriek te brengen. Nee, het is allemaal generiek, allemaal herbruikbaar. Dus de loop kan kleiner worden, kan lokaler blijven. Go with the flow, dat vind je terug in transport. Ik dacht, er zijn al heel veel bewegingen, kunnen we die niet gebruiken? Er is een continue stroom van bezorgbusjes, die komen ons spullen brengen naar winkels, naar consumenten, thuisadressen. Kunnen we die stroom, kunnen we daar niet op meeliften om ook die verpakkingen weer terug te krijgen en zo de cirkel rond te maken. Dus we drijven mee met de stroom, bezorgbusjes. We bezorgen dus niet alleen de producten in standaard verpakkingen, maar halen die verpakkingen ook gelijk weer op en zo is de cirkel rond. Dat was het.
Deze kunnen jullie zo aan de grote supermarkten pitchen. Want Europa voert een productresponsibility van de producerende bedrijven in. En de retail heeft echt het probleem om die verpakkingen daar te krijgen. Dus jullie kunnen die zo doorpitchen.
Nou, wat gaan we doen?
Kennen jullie Pieter Pot?
Ja.
Eigenlijk bijna het concept inderdaad, maar dan in het
Ja,
echt.
ja, inderdaad. En dat zou je dan nog veel groter willen, niet alleen voor voedingsmiddelen, maar voor allerlei producten.
Ja, en Albert Heijn is gisteren ook in Hillegersberg.
Ja, met dezelfde
de potten
vullen van...
vullen en zo.
Ja.
Ja, cool, mooi.
Goed, volgende groep.
Ja. Oké. Wij zijn het team Hermit Crab. En wij zijn daar opgekomen omdat wij gingen nadenken over de uitdaging was ook recycling. Een loopje maken van het hergebruik van spullen. En toen kwamen we op het feit van kleding. Hoe gaan we nu met kleding om? Fast fashion is een uitdaging die we denk ik als samenleving hebben. Maar dat bracht ons ook weer terug aan. Maar hoe gaan we nou meer verantwoordelijkheid leggen bij de drager ook van kleding? We hebben weinig connectie met onze kleding, omdat we het ook niet zo hebben gemaakt. En als je die connectie niet met die kleding hebt, dan ga je ook een nieuw halen als de kleding kapot is. Dus we hebben op weg geholpen. Bijvoorbeeld een Hermit Crab, die heeft een schelp nodig om te kunnen overleven, maar ook om tegen de zon te kunnen. Maar op een gegeven moment groeit dat beestje uit zijn schelp. En dan, wat gebeurt er dan? Wat voor systeem komt er dan op gang? Dan gaan ze dus elkaar helpen om dus weer in die volgende schelp te komen, die dus wel past. En dus zo die schelpen weer blijven vullen die op dat strand liggen. En dat is echt een team effort. Toen kwamen we eigenlijk op het idee van gewoon met kleding. Zouden we kleding ook niet op zo'n manier kunnen inrichten dat we eigenlijk kleding dusdanig maken dat het voor meerdere groepen tegelijkertijd beschikbaar zou moeten zijn. We begonnen te denken ook in scholen bijvoorbeeld, waar kinderen allemaal bij elkaar komen. Zouden we daar niet gewoon universele kleding kunnen laten dragen? En voor een aantal jaar op school die kleding kunnen laten dragen. Zodat we niet krijgen dat je verschillende klassen in kleding hebt. Waardoor je druk voelt misschien om kleding te gaan kopen voor de ene wat de ander dat ook doet. Waarom moet je per se iedere dag anders eruit zien? En toen kwamen we op de identiteit uit en toen dachten we oké, maar we moeten losdenken. We moeten losdenken van de manier zoals wij gewend zijn te gaan denken. En dan zou dit kunnen gaan werken. Dus we hebben het doel, een stukje overleven. Het overleven hier is een, ja, die krab heeft dus die schelp nodig om te overleven. En nu is de vraag, hebben we als mensen als kleding nodig? Ja, weet ik niet helemaal, maar oké. En dus een stukje lokaal. Hè. Wij begonnen op een gegeven moment ook te denken vanuit een schaap. Hè. En een schaap die geeft wol en wol is ook in ieder geval zoiets van wol je kleding kan maken. Zelfreinigende zit daar ook in. Dus zo hebben wij geprobeerd naar de natuur te kijken en te kijken van goh, wat kan de natuur ons bieden om uiteindelijk ook van te leren. Van water gebruiken om dingen schoon te maken, is dat wel echt heel erg nodig. Denken we dat het nodig is. Vanuit die kaders zijn we los gaan denken. Wil je nog iets van weten?
Nee, wat jij op een gegeven moment ook nog opperde, is dat je eigenlijk dit op van alles en nog wat kan toepassen. Dus ook dat je kan
Huizenmarkt.
Op de huizenmarkt. Eigenlijk, ja, je hebt een bepaalde hoeveelheid middelen en je hebt een kleine community erbij. Misschien kun je wel huizen ook doorgeven op generatie dat je of ruilen in feite, zodat je ook efficiënter ermee omgaat. Dus dat je eigenlijk kijkt binnen kleinere communities, wat is daar? Daar hou je ook die middelen en dan kijk je wie past dat nou eigenlijk op dit moment het best en daar betaal je eigenlijk dan mee.
Je schelp inderdaad. Ik gaf als voorbeeld mijn ouders wonen dus in een gezinswoning. Wellicht met mijn vriendin dus in een appartement wonen. Terwijl zij vanuit de kapitalistische gedachte blijven zij daar wonen, terwijl ik kan geen huis kopen. Dat was het idee, ja. Nee, dit is klaar.
Het is klaar, goed zo.
Because we're running out of time, I would like to invite you to do a really short pitch.
I will do a really short pitch. Our challenge was how can we learn from nature to create a shared resource network with sustainable communities. We took as our animal the Mimicodia. We discovered throughout our overall thinking that one of the biggest challenges is that humans are quite prone to deplete their resources, whereas animals just don't do that. They shy away from actually depleting their whole environment. The Mimicodia is capable of working together with butterfly larvae and with a plant to build a very, very small ecosystem and to indeed ensure that everything remains local. So that is our overall idea. Yes, thank you. So this is our think map. And our overall idea is that eventually we want to be able to have gardens that are the smallest type of ecosystems that we have, that we know, that can sustain themselves locally. So not chuck all your green waste into a bin and hope that some compost will be become available to buy you again in the supermarket someday, but just keep it as local as possible. Mimicodia is een ant. Het is een mier die dat samen met een larven en een reptiel van een vlinder en met een
So we can't pronounce our group name because it's called Colospermum fiddler crab. So it's both plant and animal. We were working on the same problem as to create shared resources for a sustainable community, and we came up with the Colospermum is like a plant that grows and the leaves collect water. So that gives the idea that you can start with something that grows. And then the fiddler crabs, could one of you explain what
Yeah, so the animal has this big scissor-like arm, and it's able to basically collect food out of mud, like filter out the useful and the not useful. And so that principle we thought was also very useful for community resource.
So we came up with an abstract design principle, grow collection units that filter back from good stuff to provide a shared valuable resource.
And we want to, we didn't ask what application area we had in mind, but afterwards we asked. So what was the application area you had in mind?
We thought about community libraries, you know, like these little houses that are placed that people can put in books and take away from them. And I was thinking like, who's doing the quality control? So if that happens in a good way, then it's probably sustainable. As an example.
And in I live in a block of houses, and I would like to have a shared collection unit for warmth in summer, where you can heat your houses in the summer and in the winter. I thought, how can we get the people dig a hole together? And then they came up with the idea that we can start with small sinks, but provide a connection channel that 2 or 3 people start, and everybody can connect their own small sink to have a larger system. So that's how we could provide this idea.
Wow. Nice.
So we are at the end of our workshop. Where's Marie? Marie, here. This was wonderful. I think we all want more. And
I hope so.
You brought books.
Yeah, I brought books today. So the first one is Biomimicry by Benias, who is actually the, let's go over the inventor of biomimicry. Then next to it you will see Biomimicry Resource Handbook, which is about how to practice biomimicry. And there you see all the tools that I brought here today. Next to that is Biomimicry in Education, which is by Dr. Laura Stevens, and it is about how to integrate biomimicry into your education and how to teach biomimicry. And on the right side is the most read for book is Eyesight, so how you can go outside, observe nature, follow your biomimicry journal, fill it with ideas, and take inspiration by nature, so you can continue with this practice. I strongly advise you to visit asknature.org if you haven't today, and biomimicry.net. And also, you strongly advise you to follow Biomimicry Education on Instagram, which is Dr. Laura Stevens' account. And if you have any questions for me, you can always reach me out on the email. That is my work email. And any book that you choose from this collection is a treasure, but I think you would have most fun with the Eyesight book. So you can also go outside, enjoy the nature, and learn a few things. So thank you.
Thank you. I think the main program will be here, so we have to move out quite quickly now.
More than 35,000 tracks and 90,000 sound effects. Start your 30-day free trial today.